Can you explain how Ahsoka was able to purify a blade crystal? Why yes I can. And I will, because explaining deep Star Wars lore is basically my way of connecting with the Force. So if you like videos like this, do me a favor and force push that subscribe button. Not only is it your destiny, but the algorithm wills it. Now, let's get into it. So purification of the dark side isn't just something Jedi can do, it's actually one of their responsibilities, though they have their limits. To really understand how Ahsoka pulled this off, we need to take a quick dive into two different yet significant aspects of the Force: light versus dark, and balance versus corruption. It's kind of like yin and yang, but with space wizards and more potential for dramatic portrayals. George Lucas says that the light side is the Force in its purest, most natural form, while the dark side is the corruption of the light. But he has also made statements about how the light and dark must stay balanced, and when it goes out of balance, that's when darkness takes over. This is why we see two different ways the light and dark interacts in Star Wars. One is the battle between light and dark itself, and the other is the broader struggle between balance and corruption. When the Force is in balance, light and dark exist in harmony. But if one side overpowers the other too much, that's when corruption kicks in, and that's where the real problem begins. One of the ways they visualize this corruption is through Sith eyes. Dark side entities like the Son of Mortis or Dark Anakin in the World Between Worlds have fiery red eyes, but Sith Lords like Palpatine and Vader, they have those sickly yellow eyes. Why? Because they're not just using the dark side, they're corrupting it. They corrupt it because they know that through their corruption, they get a major boost in power, even though it comes at a cost, something that the Sith consider a noble sacrifice. So it's not just an aesthetic choice. This is also why Sith don't just embrace the dark side, they actively embrace the corruption as well. Even Sidious himself admitted it in the Darth Plagueis novel when stating, "The power of the dark side is an illness that no true Sith would wish to be cured of." I mean, at least they're self-aware. Another example of this representation are the ones of Mortis themselves. They represent the different aspects of the Force. The son is the dark, the daughter is the light, and the father is the balance. And then there's Abeloth, the corruption, the imbalance. And keep in mind that in her corrupt state, she was stronger than the other Mortis gods combined. All they could manage was to seal her away. This is why the Jedi often treat the dark side like a toxin, because most of the time, when they encounter it, they're not just dealing with the dark side in its natural form, they're dealing with full-blown Force corruption. And since Sith Lords spend all their time making things worse, Jedi have had to develop ways to purify, or at least suppress, corrupted dark side energy. Some methods involved entire Jedi teams meditating to cleanse an area or object. Or if it's too much for them, they might set up shrines or temples to try to offset the dark side energy. Like how the Jedi temple on Coruscant is built on top of a dark side temple just to keep the energy in check. But there's one problem that tends to get in the way. Purification requires willingness. Take Vader for example. Plenty of people tried to bring him back, mostly through force, but only Luke succeeded, because instead of fighting him with power, he fought him with love and compassion, and in the end, he made Vader want to become Anakin again and return to the light. On the other hand, in Legends, Jedi healers tried to bring Depa Billaba back to the light after she fell to the dark side, but since she never chose the light herself, they could never fully save her. And some corrupted sites are just too far gone for purification. Planets like Korriban and Dathomir, yeah, those are just lost causes. So, when a Sith bleeds their Kyber crystal, they're not just aligning it with the dark side, they're corrupting it. This process is so violent that the crystal literally screams out in pain, a scream only heard through the Force. What's wild about this is that when it comes to corrupting lightsaber crystals, Kyber or otherwise, it doesn't actually make them produce stronger lightsaber blades. In fact, if done wrong, it makes the blade unstable. It's just done as an insult to the Jedi they were taken from. That's why Ahsoka's purification is so incredible, because bleeding a crystal is essentially poisoning it. And she wasn't just trying to turn it back to the light, she had to heal it completely. So now to address the main question here, how did she do it? Because when you look at her situation, you realize that the odds were very much against her. Ahsoka was not trained on how to purify. Being Anakin's Padawan along with being thrust into the Clone Wars at the age of 13, Ahsoka focused her time on things like combat, strategy, survival skills, diplomacy. Not to mention, bleeding crystals was a Sith practice only used for taunting Jedi. Plus, with 1,000 years having passed since the Sith's return, the bleeding process had become unknown to the Jedi, so she would not have heard about it in her time at the temple. However, one factor came into play that made it possible, which is revealed to us in the Ahsoka Tano novel. Ahsoka, who was on the run from the Empire, had just fled the planet she was currently hiding on, Ra'eda, due to the Empire showing up and occupying the planet for resources and labor, only to learn that an Inquisitor had gone to Ra'eda looking for her, and had eliminated a handful of her friends. Knowing she had to go back to face this Inquisitor and save the people of Ra'eda, Ahsoka first goes to planet Ilum, where she got her original Kyber crystals, in hopes of finding new ones so she could make new lightsabers, since she had abandoned her original ones at the end of the Clone Wars, sabers that would be found by Vader. Bookmark that detail. However, Ilum was being mined by the Empire, so she had to sneak on the planet. Once she managed to sneak on Ilum, she meditated in hopes of finding new crystals, but even though she could feel the life of all the Kyber crystals still on Ilum, none called out to her. But after a little while, she felt a calling that was not coming from Ilum, a call that felt like it was light years away. So Ahsoka goes to her star map and allows the Force to guide her hand so she can map out the crystal's location, only to realize that her crystals are crying out to her from Ra'eda, the very planet that the Inquisitor is waiting for her on. What's insane here is that the crystals are calling out specifically to her from literal light years away. For this to happen, it could only mean one thing, that after Vader found Ahsoka's lightsabers, he gave the crystals away to this Inquisitor so he could bleed them. Probably Vader's way of trying to kill off his feelings for Ahsoka by not bleeding the crystals himself, but to allow a complete stranger to do it. But those crystals had not forgotten Ahsoka, and were calling out for help, a call that Ahsoka wasted no time answering. Ahsoka returns to Ra'eda and fights the Inquisitor without a weapon, and in true "I don't even need a lightsaber" fashion, she disarms him by touching his lightsaber hilt and blasting it with the Force, breaking it and causing it to explode in his face. Now that's what we call style points. You know, I really wish this is the fight that we got on screen and not the one from Tales of a Jedi. The way this one goes down is just so much cooler. She then takes the broken pieces, retrieves her crystals, and gathers some scrap parts she'd collected on her travels, and while hiding from stormtroopers in a random back alley, she meditates. She completely surrenders herself to the Force, letting it take over and guide her hand. When she comes out of that trance, she's holding two roughly yet fully functional lightsabers, and when she ignites them, pure, uncorrupted, white Kyber blades. Now let's just take a second to appreciate just how insane this is. Not only did Ahsoka purify two fully corrupted Kyber crystals, but she also built two lightsabers without tools, using broken parts, no workbench, while hiding in a back alley, being actively hunted by stormtroopers. And that, my friends, is one of the reasons why Ahsoka Tano is an absolute legend. But I mean, she is Anakin's Padawan after all. But anyway, that's all for this one. So if you enjoyed this explainer, then be sure to like and subscribe, ring that bell, and share this video around. And if you have any Star Wars questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. And I will see you in the next video. So, until then, may the Force be with you.